Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We welcome you to this Elder Justice Initiative webinar on law enforcement resources. As with all technology, we may at some time experience a momentary lapse in the webinar session, and if that should happen, please just be patient with us, remain on the line, and the webinar should resume shortly. Just want to take a moment here to see that everyone is connected. So if you do have an individual technical problem, feel free to type a private chat message in the chat box down on your lower right to our technical specialist, Jason. If you cannot access the chat, if you can hear us, cannot access the chat, cannot access the web portion, please feel free to send Jason an email at jadams@ovcttac.org. That's jadams@ovcttac.org. Throughout the webinar, you may come up on a question that you have. If you have questions, please feel free to chat those to us. We'll take time at the end of the webinar to address any questions and as many as possible, depending on how many we have today. So today's session will be recorded and be made available following the webinar on our training website. And just want to take a moment to say that due to the nature of today's topic, there may be some images that are considered graphic in nature, so please exercise discretion when viewing. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to our first speaker, Yolanda Campbell.
Good afternoon. My name is Yolanda Campbell. I'm a trial attorney here at the Department of Justice, and I am one of many individuals who work for the Elder Justice Initiative. We are honored today to have in our company Randy Thomas. I'll allow him to introduce himself here in a little bit. And our goals of our presentation today are to provide you all with information and resources about how law enforcement can play a role in elder abuse cases. So just a quick agenda for today. I'll provide a very high-level overview of the Elder Justice Initiative. Randy will speak to the role of law enforcement in elder abuse. And then I will also be highlighting resources and information that is now available on our Elder Justice website that we believe will help support the role of law enforcement in elder abuse cases. And then we'll have a brief Q&A session at the very end to hopefully answer any questions that you all may have throughout the presentation. So just briefly, the Elder Justice Initiative supports and coordinates the Department of Justice's enforcement and programmatic efforts to combat elder abuse, neglect, and financial fraud and scams that target older adults. We do this by promoting justice for older adults, helping older victims and their families, enhancing state and local efforts through training and resources, and supporting the research to improve elder abuse policy and practice. I'm going to now turn it over to Randy, who will introduce himself and discuss the role of law enforcement in elder abuse cases.
Okay, thank you very much, Yolanda. Before we launch into what these pictures represent, and I'll tell you a little bit about who I am, I'd like to put up at least the first of our 3 polling questions to get some feedback from you. While that's rolling on, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I am a now retired police officer. I'm sure most of you out there would like to reach that wonderful status. I have 26 years of active service, several years at the Tampa Police Department in Florida, a bunch more years at the Richland County Sheriff's Office here in South Carolina, and then ultimately the South Carolina Department of Public Safety as a supervisor in the state's law enforcement training academy. One of the areas I supervised was family violence. That was domestic violence, child abuse, and interestingly enough, elder abuse. I have been an elder abuse trainer for law enforcement as well as social services and other professionals since 1990. So it's been a history. I spent 2 years as the president of the National Committee for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. I've served as a consultant to the American Bar Association, the Department of Justice, a whole bunch of other folks, and actually got to testify to the Senate once about the Elder Justice Act. I currently now do training, primarily focused on advanced investigations in elder abuse, as well as do some case consulting just to make sure I remember how to do that. Before you, I don't know, I guess we're kind of rolling at the end of the poll thing. It's kind of interesting that at least 61.5% of you have said you have responded to an elder abuse incident. That shows that we are getting better and better at getting you to be aware of it. I think now what I'd like to do is at least explain to you the pictures that you're going to see here shortly. I think most of us would like to age gracefully, remain in place. I mean, that's always a big issue. Grow up with dignity. What you're seeing before you is what happens when that doesn't happen. There is a prevalence study out there that we use that was actually done by the Medical University of South Carolina that says that a significant percentage, I think it was around 14%, of folks who are elder are the victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and then the two most prevalent, financial exploitation and neglect. Those two, by the way, are most often inextricably linked. What you see there is some neglect, some physical abuse, and then the upper left-hand corner is actually a pretty egregious neglect case that took place here in South Carolina. Why is all this important? I think with the increase in the elderly population, demographically speaking, the fact that many of you police in the agencies, and there are over 17,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, many of you are policing communities that are aging as the young people move away to look for better employment, education, and so on and so forth. So kind of what does that mean to us? I'm going to pose it in two different global looks here. First, what are the challenges we face? I'm going to look at this as much from the first responders' perspective, and I have something to say about that when you take a look at the second bullet. Well, let's first talk about detection. There's a couple of challenges we face. First, a lot of state statutes don't address elder abuse as a separate and discrete crime. You very often have to reach into your criminal statutes, look for something that fits the fact pattern that you have, and they're not always age specific. They don't often really address some of the more complex issues, particularly like in financial exploitation. So just being able to do the fact gathering when you initially get there, a lot of, majority have already said you've responded to them, and kind of sort out, am I looking at a criminal event or am I looking at something else? Sometimes you're going to confront the issue of, the perpetrator or the suspected perpetrator is going to say, I'm just stressed out. It's hard to take care of this person. And anybody that's provided care to this age group know it can be a bit challenging. And I would really like to add a comment about caregiver stress, because the truth is that's sort of victim blaming, I guess, in the current vernacular. But most importantly, we don't accept caregiver stress at all in child abuse, and we should not accept it in elder abuse as well. And I think probably the third most important thing in the detection is don't assume that what you're looking at is the only thing you're looking at in terms of physical abuse. I use neglect as the best example. You go out there and, you think that this person's not being properly, adequately taken care of. I will tell you anecdotally, follow the money. Find out why assets aren't being spent to take care of this person. So once again, detection is difficult. Investigation, and that's what you roll into. And, it's always kind of interesting. Most law enforcement agencies in the United States do not have investigators or detectives dedicated to this area. Some of the larger agencies do, but most of us don't work in large agencies. So very often our first responders, our uniform officers out there are in fact the investigators, at least on the initial scene. And some of the challenges we face with that is first determining causation. People get pressure sores, bed sores what we sometimes call them. That's a product of medical condition, hydration, all kinds of neat stuff. I use that as the best example. The mere presence of a pressure sore doesn't indicate neglect, but if they're not taking care of them, that is neglect. Kind of waffling around the edges of it. People do bruise easily at this age. People do have falls. People do experience, to a large degree, some complex medical issues that when you look at this, it may present itself as a medical issue when, in fact, if you drill down into it, it's not. I will also tell you the majority of elder abuse cases don't go to law enforcement initially. They go to what we call adult protective services. Very often, DSS or Department of Social Service or APS workers will be calling you because what they're looking at to a large degree presents itself as possibly criminal. The problem with that very often is evidence collection, time. That it may take them 2 or 3 visits before they determine something bad has happened. So you've got to really kind of take that into consideration, that you're going to be handed these cases a little late in the game very often. And you have to be aware that that's going to pose some complicated investigative issues. Finally, and I think this is probably also important, don't assume that when you go out there on a call for service that what you were sent out there for won't end up being an elder abuse case. The one we used to use in training years ago, there was a famous boxer by the name of Jimmy Bivens in Cleveland, Ohio. I think he was a welterweight. I'm not that much of a boxing aficionado, but basically they were sent out there to the Cleveland Police Department was on a child welfare complaint. They got out there and they were in the house and they were looking for the child. Interesting enough, they never did find the child. What they found in the attic was Jimmy Bivens, who'd been severely neglected to include the loss of one of his fingers by his daughter, son-in-law. It's called the law of unintended consequences. There isn't a police officer on this webinar that has not been dispatched to a call that ended up being something other than what you told it was. Never overlook any kind of a call in a home where there's an elder person and you start to get that gut check that tells you something bad is happening. Then I think the final thing is prosecution. I put the prosecution bullet on here. Later on when we talk about some of the resources, Yolanda is going to walk you through some of them that are really dedicated almost exclusively to law enforcement. But I think it's important that we understand, if I didn't learn anything as a detective, it was the fact that basically the results of my investigation were tested by the prosecutor and ultimately tested in court. I think we in law enforcement, particularly in this area, have an obligation to protect the victim and then ultimately hold the offender accountable. Holding the offender accountable is building a good case for prosecution. Here's an issue you're going to run into. This is particularly true in financial exploitation cases. Don't let a prosecutor tell you just because the son used a power of attorney to strip out all his mother's assets that it's civil. I'm going to refer you to a video at the end of this that really brings that home by a prosecutor. Understand that whatever you're doing has to play out well in court. And then finally, and this is not a criticism of prosecutors, it's just a recognition of reality. They're not trained well in this area either. To a large degree, caseloads for prosecutors are pretty high. The truth is they're going to end up very often being faced with cases that have a fairly high profile, drug cases, gang-related cases, crimes of violence. So essentially, these can be shoved to the back of the bus if you don't advocate. Now, how do we go about meeting these challenges? As a final career move on my part, I ended up being a trainer supervisor, and it's what I do now. The truth is law enforcement has become, and I entered this career field in 1977, a pretty complicated and complex profession. We are constantly being faced with the issue of training. We need to do better training. We need to do more training. We have in-service training. We have training that's dedicated to low-frequency, high-risk stuff like shooting, defensive tactics, driving that, very often can result in some pretty adverse consequences. Most academies in the United States for basic law enforcement training really, truly don't give a large block in elder abuse if they do at all. Include it. You are going to get a fair amount of domestic violence training. Some focus on child abuse, and there are some parallels in some of the case management issues with it. So a lot of times you're going to kind of be in a position of training yourself or pushing or advocating for more in-service training. To be honest with you, I think the in-service training, the follow-on advanced training probably is more productive in the long term, given the complexity of elder abuse. We do a lot of distance learning. The whole pitch today is a way to go about distance learning to basically learn more about it. I will tell you this in a kind of weird way that cops very often are. It's a very challenging way, kind of a crime. Presents a lot of really challenging issues for you. sort of put the word enjoy in quotes, but I liked working these cases because they really did challenge me as an investigator. There are a lot of resources out there now, a lot more than there used to be when I started this in 1990. You're going to see some today. There are some with the National Center on Elder Abuse. Just like I said, a lot more than there used to be. National Center on State Courts. I'm just throwing some of these out. Ultimately, the real pitch I want to make to you, and then we can kind of move on to taking a look at what some of these sources are. These cases really are going to require not just your effort, but a multidisciplinary approach. We learned this in child abuse a long time ago, that you really, in the long term, can't work these cases without other professions. First and foremost, Adult Protective Services. They understand aging, we hope. They have a lot of the skill sets necessary to kind of explain to you what you're looking at. There are a lot of aging issues, cognitive issues, stuff that we don't expect law enforcement to really know or know well unless you do this full time. But you need to know where to find these experts. Financial exploitation cases very often involve cognitive impairment, misuse of powers of attorney, guardianship, conservatorship. The list is long, requires a great deal of training. And then by and large, if you're chasing money and doing checkbooks and financial accounting is not your thing, then you're going to need somebody to kind of explain to you what you're looking at. So you really need to know what experts are available to you in your jurisdiction and take that approach to it. It is a team sport. All of us have to participate at a level that requires us to find out where these experts are. And I kind of roll out of this because I'm going to come back and talk how all this fits with some of the training resources so I get to talk to you all again. But I would like to push up the second polling question, and my tech guys are really good at that. So if you'll roll it, there you go. I would like you to sort of answer this. If you responded to a call for service and discovered the elder abuse as sort of the unintended consequences, I really would like to know that, partly for my own training purposes. And then partly I think it sort of fits. And the results I'm seeing are kind of really interesting and sort of split down the middle a little bit. So we'll sort of let that roll for a minute or two. And then I'm going to pitch it to Yolanda, so that'll get her all set up for it. I think it's important, and this is just a family violence pitch, and then we'll leave the poll and let it go a little bit and get over to Yolanda. I've always been an advocate that family violence is a complete package. If there's domestic violence and there's kids in the house and elders in the house, rolls to all members of the family. I think in some cases, and this is just Randy's anecdotal opinion, it's transgenerational. It goes from generation to generation. So it's kind of important that we understand it's a package deal. When we're out there for one thing, we should look for the other. So at that point, I'd like to leave the poll, and we'll just sort of pitch this to Yolanda and take a look at the neat things that you can improve your expertise.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, so I think why don't we, I'm going to be pulling up the Elder Justice website here in a second, but why don't we go ahead and do the third poll question first?
Sure, let's do that. Sounds like a good one.
All right, so the question, have you ever received training in responding to elder abuse beyond your initial law enforcement academy?
Yeah, I just wanted to end, echo or support what Yolanda's going to show you is where you can get this if you haven't, or even if you have, where you can get more. That's interesting numbers.
Yeah, so it looks like it's about 50-50 there.
When I started this in 1990, I can guarantee it would be about 2% that said yes, and it would be about the other 98 that would say no. So I guess we're getting better, which I personally, as much training as I'm getting to do now, I think that's true.
All right, great. So that's helpful information to know. I'm hoping that what I share with you today that we have compiled on the Elder Justice website will be able to provide you with additional resources and training that you can use in your line of work. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Great. So hopefully you all can see this. This is the ElderJustice's website. You can go to, you can basically type in ElderJustice.gov in your search bar and it will pull it up, or you can just type in www.justice.gov /ElderJustice and it will pull up, it will actually pull you up to the main website, or sorry, excuse me, I don't know what just happened there. It'll pull you up to, when you put in ElderJustice.gov, it will pull you onto the main website here. And in addition to resources that we've compiled for law enforcement officers, there's other additional resources for prosecutors and victim specialists and some research-related resources that we have on our website as well. But today our focus is going to be mainly walking you through the law enforcement page of the ElderJustice website. So if you look here on the left side of the screen, there's a toolbar, and you can just click on law enforcement. It will bring you to the page I originally had up, which is a law enforcement website. And here on the website, there are a number of resources we've compiled. You can either on the main page here, click on the subject area and it will shoot you down to a more detailed description of the topic area, along with directing you to the actual resources, or you could also just obviously scroll down this way. You know, the top up here is nice because if you know exactly kind of what you're looking for in terms of topics, you can just click on it and it'll shoot you right back down to that specific topic area. All right, and so I wanted to just spend some time this afternoon walking through all the different topic areas, and as I walk through these, I think Randy will be able to provide you with a little bit more information, I think, on kind of the applicability of some of these resources to your day-to-day, since he's a law enforcement officer as well. So the very first topic area there is reporting obligations. And here in this topic area, you can find information about your state's mandatory reporting requirements. For purposes of this webinar, I'm not going to actually click on the links, but you can see in some of the text is highlighted in like a light brown. That's actually a link, and so if you were to click on that, that will shoot you out. A lot of them shoot you outside of the ElderJustice website and directly to the PDF, or if it's like an external site that we're linking to, it'll take you to that external site. I don't want to do that today because it'll end up making me have to hit back a lot or, you know, delay the webinar. So you can click on, you know, find your state's mandatory reporting requirements, and this will give you a chart detailing the mandatory reporting requirements for your state, and this is in a PDF that would be downloadable. In addition, under the reporting obligations topic, there is a link to help you contact the local APS agency as well. And so, again, if you were to click on that link, you would be directed to the APS site. Randy, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share on the reporting obligations topic?
No, just a couple of quick ones. Not every state has mandatory reporting for elder abuse. That's the first thing. The other is that you're going to have to be very cognizant of your state's, how your state classifies an elder. My state uses a vulnerable adult, so there's some qualifying conditions. Some states 60, some states 65. Most of them, if there are mandatory reporting states, the language will somewhat parallel what you'll see in child abuse mandatory reporting. So it's very important that you need to know, one, if you're a mandated reporter in your state, and two, who else is, because there could be some criminal liability for failure to report, not so much against you, but against some other folks out there. It's probably about the only thing saying. It is worth knowing how it applies to wherever your jurisdiction is. Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next topic on the website is state law enforcement elder abuse sample protocols. And here we've highlighted some what we perceive as good sample protocols for state law enforcement. And if you, again, were to click directly on these links, it will direct you to the downloadable PDF for those sample protocols. And again, I think this is one area that Randy can probably embellish on a little bit more in terms of the applicability of these to your day-to-day.
Well, yeah, I took good notes. On the first one, Santa Clara County, California, there's good first responder stuff in there, you know, material as to what you might see, how you would handle it, and I thought they had an investigative protocol in there. And whether you're an investigator or not, it's probably a great deal of value just to see what they consider important things to look at. The second one is very indicator focused in Illinois, but it's an absolute good roll-up of all the indicators you might see on those various types of elder abuse. The last one, the Michigan model, was really written for a multidisciplinary team, joint investigative approach. I'm a great advocate of MDTs and the joint investigative kind of an angle to elder abuse, so it's worth just diving into that to see, particularly if you're interested in putting together one or you want to see how they operate. This is a good source for that. The last one, the elder abuse statutes, I think I mentioned it in my section. A lot of states don't have specific elder abuse statutes. So you're faced with two things. One is how your state defines an elder, if they even do that. And two, if you're going to have to leap over into our general crimes and our general criminal statutes, how do you make that fit with the facts that you're looking at? So you really, really do have to spend some time. You know, that's what we are about in law enforcement. We have to go out there and we have to take a look at the facts that are presented with, determine whether or not a crime's been committed. And this is going to require some effort on your part to make sure that you understand what your state requires from that. So I think that kind of rolls up the comments I wanted to make on that section.
Great, and I'll just, since this is one that's within our Elder Justice Initiative website, I'm going to go ahead and click on the elder abuse law so you guys can see kind of how this specific part of the website is organized. And so here you can see there's different topic areas similar to the law enforcement site. And again, if you were to click on some of these links, it will take you to the relevant websites or database for you to do whatever research or anything that you, or a collection of anything that you need from here. So, so if you were to go here and go ahead, Randy.
I said the one you really need to read if you're ever going to work with financial exploitation cases, the power of attorney. That is a weapon of choice. Yeah. And it just kind of pays to understand how your state treats powers of attorney. Because at this particular point, I know the Bar Association is trying to get sort of a uniform statute across all states, but right now there doesn't exist one, at least not to my knowledge.
All right, and then I guess, you know, if you were to click on that elder abuse laws link back from the law enforcement, it shoots you here. So to get back to the law enforcement, you can just go back to the left toolbar here and then click law enforcement, and it shoots you back to the page that we originally were at. Okay, so the next topic after the sample protocols is investigating elder abuse. And again, these are resources that we believe are some of the better resources out there in terms of helping you determine best practices or other information related to actually investigating elder abuse cases. Again, the very first bullet there, the very first resource is that elder abuse laws website that we just went through. And then I don't know, Randy, if you have additional comments that you would like to make about some of these other resources that we have compiled here.
I do. I spent some time and effort looking through them again to refresh myself. The first one, though, I will have to say is kind of a dated one, best practices, because a lot of states have actually gone past that. It is worth at least going in there and taking a look to see if there's something in there that, you find particularly intriguing or interesting and you want to pull out. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement one is really, I find it interesting partly because years ago I had a hand in some of the material that went in that. It's interactive. It's sort of mandatory in-service training for the state of Florida, but it is good. And if you get into it and you want to take a good hard look at it or participate in the training that it presents to you, it is probably very good and not wasted effort. It is very Florida specific when it gets to the statutes and resources available, but you can never lose by doing that. The legal issues related to elder abuse, a pocket guide. This is a recent document put out by the American Bar Association. A number of us worked on it, including several of us from law enforcement, some prosecutors, some judges. The American Bar Association, it is on the ABA website. I think this is the link that will take you to that. It has a downloadable PDF package, and it is probably at this point the best global guide to all the legal issues associated with elder abuse, powers of attorney, guardianship, conservatorships. Lord, I think they even have some frauds and scams material. I will flat tell you it is worth your effort to get it, take a look at it, and if your department doesn't mind the paper, print it. They used to have guides that you could get, but I think the funding for that no longer exists. I would strongly recommend that everybody out there have it. It's well worth it. Even prosecutors probably need to have it. The Multidisciplinary Team Protect Assistance Center, once again, as an advocate of MDTs, this is where you go if you want to put one together. I would recommend that. I will tell you that MDTs is probably worth it. Actually, maybe even more worth it for smaller jurisdictions if you can take the same approach we have to a lot of degrees with the multi-agency drug task force, because that allows you to pull in them expertise from surrounding jurisdictions, surrounding areas, and put together one. The elder abuse laws from the National Center on State Courts, once again, it's just a good place to go, take a look at states. And then last but not least, the durable power of attorney. This was actually the predecessor to the ABA guide that you see now. That was put out a number of years ago. You can look at it. It's a very short and succinct discussion of durable powers of attorney. But I think if you go back and you have the ABA guide, not much utility in printing this one out. But once again, it's never a waste. Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, so the next topic we have under the Law Enforcement Resources website is general elder abuse training. And so these are general training guides and manuals. There's some links to videos in here that we thought would be useful if you all are looking for some additional kind of high-level training related to elder abuse. And again, I think Randy can probably speak more towards how these resources could be useful for you all.
Yeah, I would recommend this is where you go first. There is something to be said for the word general, I suppose. New York, a lot of lifespan. I know the people who put this together. There is some great general material on aging. And I think there's a lot of myths out there about aging, particularly in terms of their capacity, their ability to recall events, their ability to cooperate in an investigation. The older I get, the more strident I get about saying that. Do not assume just because somebody is elderly that they're not capable of helping you, or at least giving you a fairly accurate history of what happened to them. But it is important that you do understand just how people age. Matter of fact, if nothing else, it's going to happen to you. Might as well give you some insight. The second one, the Law Enforcement Field Guide, so on and so forth. Good general source. It was pretty much based on a lot of material the Office on Violence Against Women did it. So a lot of the material that's in there rolls back to the grant program that they run, but it's good material. It's good general material. But the part I really liked about this is the only training material I saw in there with very specific stuff on frauds and scams. And if I might, time-wise, digress for just a second. When we talk financial exploitation in the elder abuse training arena, we focus almost exclusively on the type of financial exploitation that involves what we call a trusted relationship. In other words, the victim and the perpetrator have a relationship. Be a family member, could be a broker. I had one of those to the tune of about $600,000. Could be a caregiver. It could be a certified nursing assistant. But the victim and the perpetrator know each other. They're involved in it, and the perpetrator is very often involved in the victim's life. That, to a large degree, excludes frauds and scams, which are, to a large part, when you look at that material, are crimes where the perpetrator doesn't have that trusted relationship, that close relationship with an elder. Now, they target elders because of their vulnerability. Truth is, right now, elders have a lot more assets than the generation behind them. So it's important that you understand the distinction, you understand frauds and scams, how that works, and this training material actually gets to that. So it's pretty cool. The third one out is very Arizona-specific, state-specific. I have no qualms with looking at state-specific material, just as long as you know that going in, that there will be things in there that may not apply to your state. But once again, it's worth just seeing how other people approach the problem. And then we get to my favorite video for all kinds of reasons, some of which will not be discussed on this. But by and large, if you're going to do anything at all, initially, go look at this video. It rolls it all up in one nice, neat package. It's well done, lots of different aspects. It includes facility investigations, and I'll come back to that in a minute. We really haven't talked about that. It is just absolutely the perfect introduction to what this is all about. And it's got some really good people on there, Dr. Mosqueda, some others. But by and large, it also talks about facilities, which, if you look at the CMS regulations now, facilities are required to report to local law enforcement any suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation within the facility. That's an investigative topic way past this webinar. It is also very much way past most agencies to handle a facilities investigation. But you do need to know that you may be the first responders to it by federal statute. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Then the last couple are basically linked that are done by Georgia, Pat King and her. Georgia's done some really good training material down there. You basically have to get in it, sort of sign up for it. So you have to be willing to do that. It's good stuff. It's just going to require you to make some extra special effort that some of the other material won't require. So that's kind of my comments on that section. Once again, go to the video first before you look at anything else. I do have some things to say about some of the others, but that one was important to me. Okay. Want to talk about Alzheimer's for a minute?
All right, great, thanks. Okay, so yeah, so the rest of these sections here are topic areas. We call Alzheimer's disease and capacity issues. Again, we've provided a few resources here related to how law enforcement can basically deal with individuals who may have Alzheimer's disease and other issues related to their capacity. Randy, did you have anything specific you wanted to point out about that section?
I think just a cautionary note that all capacity issues are not Alzheimer's. There are other capacity issues that you need to know about. Matter of fact, you'll probably, the Alzheimer's stuff really has to do with first responders and how you deal with that person, period. They may not necessarily be involved in an elder abuse case. That's what the safe return thing is. But I think you need a little broader training in just capacity issues, dementia, the different types of dementia, that kind of stuff. It's going to come up, so you might as well do it. Okay, enough said.
Great, and then the next section relates to HIPAA requirements. Again, a couple external links here. that guide you to guidelines about releasing patient information to law enforcement and other HIPAA-related issues as well. And then in addition to the remaining topics, I guess, include sexual abuse. There's a elder sexual abuse instructor-led training that we have available here for you. And in addition, there's resources related to physical and emotional abuse. And then there is a section on financial exploitation. Here we've highlighted 2 resources. I should say that in addition, we are anticipating having additional webinars or trainings related to financial exploitation and elder abuse as well. And then here we have other websites for law enforcement that we thought we would highlight for you all. So Randy, did you have anything that you wanted to say on any of those additional topics?
No, other than, when I see the links, it's all good stuff. I mean, there's nothing up there that it doesn't have value to it. I would like to, if we can do that very quickly, just go over and look at the prosecutor's site for just a second.
Yep, so that was my next section.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I was wondering over, we already got some questions, so I was just kind of looking at those too. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot see the questions that are coming in because I have the screen share. So why don't I go, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys all some additional resources that are on the prosecutor's website that Randy wanted to highlight, and I'll let him talk more about that. But again, there's all these other topic areas here on the Elder Justice website. You can find them on the left here. Within the topic areas, there's like subtopics, and of course, all the resources and links are there. And so to get to the prosecutor's website, you would just click on prosecutors, and it would direct you here. And then again, similar layout to how the law enforcement website is. There's different links and resources available. And so we're going to go specifically here to the prosecutor training and resources. And I think that there are a number of resources here that Randy would like to highlight for you. So Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, there are 3 of them that I think are really kind of worth effort for law enforcement. I mean, let's be perfectly honest, folks. We sometimes have an adversarial relationship with our prosecutors, at least sometimes. But I think the first one, how prosecutors and law enforcement can work together just by its new title, I'll have to tell you that's something you need to look at. The two prosecutors are on there, both Paige and Paul Greenwood, are experts in their area, absolute experts. Paul Greenwood's the one that'll tell you don't ever tell him a case is civil. He's got a lot to say about that. But I think it's important that you take a good hard look and watch it and get a gut feel for how to present your case to a prosecutor in terms of, you need to do that. APS, you need to look at the APS one. You're going to be working with APS to a large degree. Ricker knows his business. It's really important that you understand how APS works, because I would tell you in the majority of cases that you'll be involved in, they will be involved in. And then the third one I kind of pulled out was how prosecutors and law enforcement can work with Adult Protective Services by virtue of its title. You're in it. You should look at it. I know sometimes you wouldn't think to go over the prosecutor section, which is kind of why I asked you to pull it up and let us talk through it. First one's probably the most important because it does bring home the important thing that your prosecutors do have an obligation to prosecute these cases, generally without victim cooperation very often. So yeah, I think it's a good source.
Great, and yeah, all these videos are relatively short. They're less than 10 minutes or so, so hopefully you all would be able to have some time to be able to view them. Again, today we really focused on the law enforcement specific website, but I do want to encourage everyone to, if you have time, to go ahead and explore other areas of the Elder Justice website. There may be resources here that you may find useful. And before I go to questions too, I just want to highlight there's this contact us section, and if you email email us this email address here, this is a good way for you, if when you're reviewing the law enforcement resources, if there's any suggestions that you have, or you encounter any errors or anything like that, you're more than welcome to send us an email and let us know, because our hope is to keep this this website and all these resources up to date, so that they're of value to you and your work. Okay, so I think I'm going to get out of the screen share so that we can address some of the questions that you all have.
Aha. Yeah, I'm sort of looking them over. Everybody had a chance?
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead, Randy. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I'll take the first one. We didn't talk about fatality review teams. There is, if you simply Google it, there is material out there on fatality review for the elderly. Actually, if you go on the National Center for Elder Abuse, you get into the Laura Mosqueda's material in there. You're going to find a great deal of information on fatality review. Number of jurisdictions, I think Maine's one of them. I don't know if King County, Washington has one or not. I know California has a couple. Kind of a complex issue, but yeah, the material is out there. The links are out there. If you're looking to set one up, there are people you can actually talk to who are running ones now. So, Yolanda, have you seen anything or did anything come into y'all?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything specific on the Elder Justice website, but that is something we could definitely take in consideration. But just to reiterate, because I don't know if I don't think Randy, you read the actual question out loud, but the question was, do you have any materials or links to models for elder fatality review teams? So again, like I had mentioned earlier, the link to the email address is up on the slide right now. If you do have suggestions for resources that you think would be valuable for us to include on the Elder Justice site, particularly the law enforcement section, feel free to email that suggestion to us. All right, so the next question, it looks like, is this question is for you, Randy. It says, how do we act to protect exploited seniors who are not in a facility and not declared as a vulnerable adult, but being exploited or neglected?
Yeah, I actually know the people that asked that question, and it's very state-specific. It does pose a problem, though. You're going to be dealing with what we, in quotes, call elder abuse, when in fact your state statutes don't either characterize them as elder because of age, if you're using the age-based statute, or here in South Carolina, it's 18 and up, but they have to have some vulnerability. I don't have a really good specific answer to that, because I think the question is law enforcement has not been as responsive to that. If they are a victim of a crime under the general criminal statutes, fraud, theft, I mean, every state's going to have a little bit different way of looking at those property crimes, then you're going to have to take the fact pattern over to that side and not deal with it as elder abuse. They just purely are a victim of a crime, and you'll have to be very specific about that. I don't know how else to answer it other than that, unless somebody has greater expertise than I do. And I think I'm kind of looking to see if we want to roll some of these up, because the follow-up question that I'm looking at kind of gets into the same area and probably a little bit too lengthy to read out. Yolanda, can you see it?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I agree. So how about the question of how do we combat the closure of investigations when the victim passes away?
All right. I'll give you the quick pop answer, and then I'll qualify it a bit. I have never closed a homicide case because the victim passed away. I think that's just an issue. It's the state of wherever you live versus the perpetrator. It's not the victim. And if the victim is deceased, you may still have a case Well, I'm looking at one right now here in South Carolina where the victim is deceased and they're considering reopening the case to look at it for prosecution. I did a forged will case here in South Carolina. Victim was dead. We've done a number of them. As a matter of fact, I've done 3 South Carolina cases in the last 2 years where the victim has been deceased and we successfully prosecuted. So I don't think that's an issue. If they're telling you it's an issue, it's because they don't want to handle the case. It's not a valid one in terms of prosecution. And anybody, I don't know, those of you who are prosecutors may disagree with that, but I don't see that that's important. I think what you do lose, though, is an advocacy on the part of some folks that, well, the victim's dead, no sense of pursuing it. And anybody feeling, Yolanda, you feeling different about that?
Yeah, that is not my area of expertise, so I would defer to you and others on that.
I think it's probably fair, because we've already had like 3 questions where it's really getting to be interesting. There are a lot of you out there that are going to have a frustration with law enforcement in as much as you don't feel that they take the case. And I'm just talking to folks out there who's not law enforcement. Or law enforcement, you're going to feel frustrated because the prosecutor won't take the case. This is as much an education process as anything else. It's also a process where some states, fair to say, don't have statutes that are that supporting of prosecuting elder abuse. It's that simple. Every case is fact specific. I can't give you a global answer on how to address it. I will tell you that, a good quality investigation should lead to at least a chance to prosecute. In defense of prosecutors, ethically speaking, it has to be a case that they feel they can win or they won't take it, can't take it, shouldn't take it. So you got that. These are complex stuff. And closing an investigation because they don't feel that, the victim's not alive, so therefore it's not worth it, is to me not an answer. Should be some other reasons maybe, but not an answer. I see one there. Are there any resources you would recommend for addressing elder abuse in rural areas? I think that's more just a question of what resources are available to you. It exists both rural and in big cities, very specifically. The Administration on Aging has some initiatives out there having to deal with the rural areas. These sort of wrap-around resource centers. You might want to take a look at the AAAs, the Area Agencies on Aging. That's a good place to start. My state, home state of South Carolina, has more rural than urban, and our AAAs actually do handle some of the rural stuff in a fairly good manner. Are we seeing any more? No, not yet.
I think that may be it. I don't know if anyone else has any additional questions. This is, I guess this would be last call.
Yeah. I will tell you, if you want to get in touch with me, the folks at the Elder Justice Institute know how to do that. If you have some very specific questions or you want some additional resources, or who does training, I'm probably at a position that can tell you that, and I don't mind answering that. Or if they have no objections, I can go ahead and give you my email, if you care. Or if some of y'all would think that would be helpful out there. I noticed over in the chat that somebody posted up a link to the fatality review teams. That's good. I love that. What do you do if doctors are reluctant to call something abuse? Yes, they are. I will flat tell you that. I ran into that first because I started out as a child abuse investigator before I started that. Doctors are always hesitant to render a medical opinion. Here's what I would suggest, and this is just throwing it out to you. You will do better with nurses. I will defend that statement to death. Find some folks out there with some knowledge in geriatric nursing or forensic nursing and take your facts over there. They are better at it. Matter of fact, the Forensic Nurses Association, and I think in Yolanda's links over there in the Elder Justice Unit, stuff, there's a link over there to the forensic nurses. Can be a lot of help in sorting that out for you. I would never tell you that doctors are going to be super cooperative in this area. Are we getting close to rolling out?
Yeah, I think that looks like no. It doesn't look like anyone else has any questions coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to thank you all for taking the time today to join us. Hopefully, you found this valuable and that you will be able to utilize the ElderJustice.gov website to your benefit. Again, if there are any suggestions that you all have on how we can improve the website, please feel free to email us at elder.justice@usdoj.gov.